We took the Dart to the Mohican Car Show, so it was about a 2.5 hour drive, and drove all around Mohican, drove back home again, and all during that time the front end clunked very loudly. Clunked before, but not as bad. We replaced the sway bar bushings, both the frame mount bushings and the end links. Didn't really make any difference in the clunking. Didn't make a big difference in the way it handled, so that was good. But one of the things I want to do now is replace the upper and lower suspension bushings either side. You can't see the one on the bottom. And probably the upper and lower ball joints at the same time. So there's a whole variety of ways that this is done online. Some of them don't seem to work. What I'm going to do is start by getting the brake calipers out of the way. There's still all the spring tension on it. And I'm going to be careful when I take away the spring tension to count the turns, because I'm happy with the ride height, even though the ride height made the alignment all out of whack. But after this is going to need to be realigned anyway. So,
bit of an editor's note here. It is currently 9/29/2025, and we filmed this video in late July. Currently, still haven't gotten alignment. Still probably should.
I'm going to take the brake caliper off. I'm going to loosen, but not remove, just loosen the nuts for both the upper and the lower ball joint while it's under tension. After they pop loose, I'll take away all the tension. Need to remove the shock absorber so that I can get the bolts out on top. We'll remove the tie rod end. I'll already have the brake caliper up and out of the way so we can pull the spindle out with the hub attached to it. And then we can start working on the actual upper and lower bushings. I purchased energy suspension, I guess part number 5.3112G. I actually kind of wanted the ones that didn't include the sleeve. That sealed up really well. So this is a lower, and it goes in using the factory sleeve. This is an upper, goes in using the similar type sleeve. We also purchased at the same time strut rod bushings. I didn't point that out when I was under the car. So it's got an A-arm on top and it doesn't have an A-arm on the bottom, just a control arm. It's attached to the chassis using this strut rod. At the front of it up here, it's got bushings. They're easily seen and they're not in that bad a shape, but I'm not going to take it all apart without putting new bushings in it. And one of the guys that maybe you too have been watching online is the Dead Dodge Garage guy, and he points out that there's washers on either end of these strut rod bushings and they need to go a specific way, and he finds that they're all going the wrong way. Mine are all going the wrong way. So they've been replaced at some point in the past, and somebody put them back on using what looks like a logical way to put them back, but they actually go the other way because of the design of the pivot. So we'll be reversing those. All along the way, we'll be taking pictures and videos and marking components as they come out. There's going to be washers in specific locations. The cams for the alignment on the top bushings are there. I want to put them back the way they are, even though I know it's not correct. It was correct at some point before we raised the front end. Then we'll have a regular alignment shop do the alignment afterwards. So I guess with that, let's get started. Okay, so I got the tie rod end off. I'm using the standard whack it with a hammer method. popped right off. The cotter pin on it wasn't mangled. The cotter pin on this, however, the upper ball joint is mangled. One thing, they seem really nice and tight in terms of looseness.
The ball joints, you mean?
The ball joints, yes. They definitely need greased because it should turn freer than that. I'm trying to get the cotter pin out now, which I may end up cutting and or I don't know what.
Breaking.
But it's definitely screwed up. Then afterwards, we'll take the this ball joint loose and lower ball joint loose using the same method. Again, I've got the spring tension in here, so I do not want to loosen these bolts beyond just a little bit loose. If you look real close down here, you can see that that is tapered, and so just the slightest bit of movement out and it's loose. So maybe a turn, 2 turns. We'll see when we get there how far out we can make it go. But I'll show you that after I get this cotter pin out of here. So I got the cotter pin out. I got the nuts loose just a little bit, not a whole lot because I don't want this to all fly apart. My plan is the same as with this. Back it up with a hammer. Hit it with the hammer on the other side. I should get the bigger hammer.
Eventually, the bigger hammer did indeed work. We had some audio issues in this section, so I'm going to dub it over. There is the spindle. Once it was off the car, we were able to break it loose from the ball joints with a larger hammer. What you see there is the ball joint itself with a castle nut put back on it to kind of protect the threads. You can see that both upper and lower look kind of beat up. Now we're looking at the chassis side of the control arms, which is the next section of the suspension that we need to take off. What we're doing now is taking note of the locations of the eccentrics, which set the toe in and out on the control arm. They are the round sections on either end of those bolts. We will find out in a moment that the eccentrics were not in the correct place to begin with, due to one of them being seized.
So here's what the eccentrics look like. In this case, I checked them and they were both straight up, but rotating them moves the control arm in or out. You can see there's a flat on this that matches up with the flat on this, so that when you're dialing in the camber angle, both eccentrics move the same amount. Now I'll get the one out of the other side. I forgot to point out when I said that my phone was overheating that it's 89 degrees out. You remember when I said as it's going over dips in the road, it steers?
Yeah.
That's because this is seized in here. So instead of it staying still, it's rolling the eccentric, the bolt's not pivoting in the bushing. So it actually is steering. I'm not imagining it.
At least we found the reasoning.
Yeah, now how do I fix it?
What are the odds that eccentric's any good anymore?
Well, I don't know. It's not supposed to work that way. It's not a load bearing. I mean, it's not meant to rotate. Yes, I know that's supposed to be better tied up, but it's not.
Eventually, when penetrating lube and work and heat didn't end up solving the problem, we broke down and got to use just straight violence and attempting to cut the bolt up instead of removing it whole.
Something just occurred to me.
What?
If I cut it from this side, I can maybe break it halfway through and pull that out. No, I can't, but it doesn't matter.
What are you doing? What are you doing, Ari? What are you doing? Vespa, what are you doing?
Okay, so I changed to this, which apparently got really, really hot, but it's actually making metal ships. Compared to nothing.
What is that?
This is an oscillating tool with a carbide tipped blade. Which I've rubbed all the teeth off of. So I saved you the tedium of watching me cut through this. I switched from the Harbor Freight blades first to the DeWalt. That didn't work too bad. Then I switched to the Lennox. That seemed to work a lot better. You can see that the center of the bolt, whoops, is seized in the bushing. It came out of the other bushing just fine, but this side, it was seized in pretty badly. So the new bushings come with a metal sleeve, but they are polyurethane, so they just slide in there. So I could either try and knock these sleeves out, or I could just take all the rubber out of it, which is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to see how the polyurethane fits in there.
So, just to kind of show what the seized eccentric was doing to the rest of the car, you can see all the deflection on the flat portion of this eccentric bolt, and when you get to the round portion of it, you can see, get the camera to focus, where it ate away at the hole that locates this, and that kind of just shows how it was pivoting in and out as we went over bumps, and then pivoting the A-arm in and out and changing the angle on the front tire, causing it to steer inadvertently.
So this is what the factory bushing looks like. You can see the rubber's all rotted and torn up. And it's in a sleeve that's pressed into the A-arm, similar to this sleeve that comes with the kit. Now, these sleeves are already pushed in here to where they go. So I could either assemble the bushing, put the polyurethane inside the shell, knock these shells out, then push this shell in, or I can get the factory bushing out of here like I did on this side, and then just take a polyurethane bushing and push it in the sleeve. And that's what I'm going to do. This one's being very stubborn, so I'm going to torch this out.
What are you doing?
So with that, we worked on torching the old bushings out. Basically what we use is just a very simple oxyacetylene torch. I would note that it is not the proper safety standards to use an oxyacetylene torch on nothing more than a highly flammable pallet, but you know, we've never had a problem, so it can't really be that bad. And all that black smoke just, probably should wear a respirator, but I mean, we'll all get cancer some way anyways.
Okay, so now you're just cooling it off?
Yeah. I got most of that burned off of there. I'll break a little rest off, push it out, clean out the rubber. Okay, and being on fire also melted all the rubber out. So now we'll just clean these up, push the bushings in. So the directions say to grease lightly with the grease that's included all parts of the bushing that contact metal, the OD of the bushing itself, the ID of the bushing, and the metal sleeve that eventually goes inside the bushing. So I'm going to start by putting a light amount of grease on the OD of the bushing. And the ID. Now the idea of these have grooves in them to hold the grease. I assume that's where it's going to pivot. And if you remember from earlier in the video, our ultimate problem was that it wasn't pivoting. The entire eccentric was pivoting, causing the A-arm to shift in the back only, because the front was pivoting like it's supposed to, but the back was not. So my mysterious bump steer was, every time this rotated, the eccentric pushed it out. Now this is the grease that came with the kit, but it's only special in that it's silicone grease, not like regular bearing grease or something. It comes with what looks to be quite a lot of it. And I have grease on all my fingers, so I probably won't need any more than this. Some kits don't come with this. I've seen people online they got to this point and realized they had to go out and buy grease.
It's nice with this, unlike the Dakota, you didn't need a sledgehammer to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people may tell me this is the wrong way to do it because I should have knocked those sleeves out and put these sleeves in, but those sleeves are fine and they're already where they belong. So I'm going with that. Then on either end of this goes a specialized washer. So I guess I'll try and fit them in. We did buy new eccentrics. Because I had to cut the one. So these are also Summit Racing, part number 83160. They have several. They're all about the same price. They're all about the same thing. So this has got a flat cut in it, so when the eccentric goes on, they're clocked in the same direction, and when you turn the bolt, it moves the whole control arm off center. So I guess let's go try and fit them. Okay, so the bolts go from the inside to the outside. If you remember from the beginning of the video, my eccentrics were both straight up. So that's where we're going to begin. And I said I wanted to take pictures of any washers that I found in there. However, there actually weren't any washers in there. And then this one was straight down.
But who really knows where that one's supposed to be?
Well, I have some thoughts. So if this is straight up and that's straight down, I have 0 camber adjustment and 0 caster adjustment, if I understand correctly. I'm going to, because we had an issue with the top being cambered out, which I can't remember whether that's positive or negative camber. I think that's, well, I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. But the top was leaned out. And these cars, any early car that was designed for bias ply tires, has a lot less caster than a radial tuned car. You're supposed to tell me when I forget to put something on. Now we won't tighten these until we're back at ride height and back on the ground, but I will snug them. Okay, so this is the strut rod. You can see that hole in it. It had a roll pin in it that I knocked out first. The strut rod goes back there to the control arm. And it doesn't come out at this point, but you need to take the nut off, then the washer, which might run backwards, then the bushing. We bought new bushings. And then down here, if I can see it, there's going to be another nut that we take loose where the lower control arm is pivoting on. But before I do that, I need to take the spring clip out on the back of the torsion bar so that we can back the torsion bar out of the way. But first, let's get this strut rod out of the way. I'm sorry, we won't be getting it out of the way. Let's get the nut out of the way.
Here you can see the bushing outside of the car. You can see how one side of it's more compressed than the other. That's from it wearing against the bottom of the K-frame. And that's really where you can tell where the wear is on these, and the elasticity tends to go out on them at the same time.
Okay, so this is the end of the torsion bar. And it has this clip that holds it in. And I thought this was going to be really hard, but it turns out you can just squeeze it with your fingers and it pops out. So that's good. So then the next thing is we're going to loosen the nut up there, wiggle the torsion bar back, and we should be able to get the control arm out. So there's this piece of plastic here that's covering up the nut for the lower control arm. So we have to get that off. So far I've been unsuccessful finding the size. Oh, no, there it is. So now, with that plastic piece removed, there's the screws that were holding it in. You can see the nut that holds the pivot for the lower control arm. And we'll be taking that out next.
At least we went through and it takes...
Oh, naturally, it's 9/16 on the bottom and 5/8 on the top.
At least we've now gone through everything we've done on the front end and undone all of it with it.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for that, because then when you hear a mysterious clunky noise, you know that you've been through it all already.
Most of it twice. Spray paint those bushings black like you wanted to.
Yeah.
They work really good, but they do kind of look stupid. And it's not like that is the same kind of bushings that you can't see at all, because you can't see anything underneath the car.
Yeah, not even really from here. Well, apparently you just
Wiggle it.
wiggle it.
The whole thing slides backwards. That is what they do on like all the motor trend shows, but I never believed that what they were doing was actually happening.
So, the torsion bar isn't really moving independently from the control arm. Okay, so you can see the torsion bar sticking out here. I just kind of loosely grabbed it with vice grips. You don't want to do anything to mar that. Any kind of stress risers that you might cause from a scratch would be bad. Then up here, Ian is just tapping on the control arm to get it to come loose. Everything on this car has been undercoated, consequently coating everything with a little bit of a sticky mess.
Okay, pull on that a second.
Okay, let me turn this off. Okay, and so here you can see the lower control arm bushing, and it's clearly no good. Also probably part of the popping and awfulness. So all we have to do is spin this out, clean out the rubber, and put in the new bushing very similar to the front. I'm sorry, to the top.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously I should put it in a vise and I should use longer than a 6-inch pipe wrench, but I can also just use fire, and I think that's what I'm going to do. So several of the people online have said, well, you can just burn these out, and no, I'm not kidding, but then they don't actually do it. When I watched the Dead Dodge Garage video, he put his in a vise and grabbed it right at that ring with a pipe wrench and spun it out, like I just tried to. But my vise is someplace I can't get to right now, and this will work fine. I'm trying to primarily heat up just the rubber. It'll eventually catch on fire and burn out of there.
So here's the part where I get to mention that while we did hope for this particular bushing to catch on fire and melt out easily like the other ones did, it decided to do no such thing. It took us probably 30 minutes, maybe more, of burning it, heaving on it with a wrench, burning it some more. I'm sure there are a variety of easier ways to do that. We were just crushed for time and didn't feel like cleaning out a section of the garage. We did eventually get the bushing to melt out enough that we were able to get it to spin freely, as you can see in the background, and eventually this allowed us to get the whole bushing out after a fair amount of cleaning.
Okay. I think the carbon from the burning rubber was actually insulating it before a little bit.
And with that, we get to the reassembly stage of this process. As you can see here, we are pushing the bushing back into the lower control arm. First, he's going to end up greasing them with the grease provided in the kit, and then install the metal intersection of the bushing into the rubber component, and then fit the entire unit back into the control arm. One thing to mention with this is that the metal shell for the original bushing is still in the control arm. After we burned the old one out, we simply cleaned the shell and left it in there. Some kits want you to remove the shell altogether. Ours did not. Simplifies the process a lot and keeps more of the OE components in use. We kind of got that idea from the Dead Dodge Garage YouTube channel. He does a lot of great work on a variety of Mopars, but he's been doing a lot of A-bodies recently, and we've used quite a few of his tips and tricks. So what you're about to see is how we finish seating the bushing within the metal shell in the control arm. What we're doing is we're taking a block of wood and a mallet so we can disperse the force from the mallet all around the bushing and not end up indenting the rubber. While it is quite a strong rubber bushing, given that it has to hold the weight of the car. It's still not good to hit it directly in one spot. One thing I will note, compared to a lot of other bushings like this that we've done, this was very easy. A lot of times it ends up being something you have to use a press for, or worse. Now you can see that he's inserting the metal rod that the bushing isolates within the control arm. And again, just putting a liberal amount of grease in it so that it doesn't end up binding up or seizing. And the grease also does a fair amount of protection against rust and corrosion, because if these components end up rusting, then they won't move as they're supposed to. And again, you can kind of see it went in without any issue, which compared to a lot of modern cars, we did bushings on my first car, which was a Jeep YJ, and we did them on my Dodge Dakota. Both times we ended up needing to take the components to a press and fight with them for a considerable amount of time, freeze parts of them, put other parts in the oven, and it just was quite a mess. But on these older Mopars, it's quite a simple process to just stuff them in.
So in the background here, you can see that we have begun the reinstallation process of the lower control arm. You can see that the metal rod that we inserted inside the new bushing just simply slides into a hole on the K-frame and then bolts into place. In addition to that, you have to begin the process of reattaching the front strut bar. As you can see to the left there, it juts out and attaches to the front substructure of the car as well. One thing when reinstalling these is it is designed to pivot very heavily, and we had to make sure to grease all the connection points where there is movement. And while all these bolts need to be tight, they don't need to be tight to the point of binding up the control arms, because that then causes you to not have proper movement in your front suspension. There's a torque spec for all these things. I don't have them on hand. I would make sure to look into that if you are recreating this process yourself. Here you can see the installation of the strut rod bushing. You'll note that earlier I stated that the ones that were in the car were incorrectly installed. You can see that the wider flat spot is supposed to fit flush against the K-member, and the tapered section is supposed to face out. In addition, the tapered section of the washer that holds it all in is supposed to face the tapered section of the bushing.
Okay, so every one of these nuts and bolts that I've taken out are kind of swaged on the top, kind of a locking mechanism. And that's cool if you're only ever going to put it on once and then send the car off into the world and let somebody else worry about it. When you take these off and then try and put them back on, they won't go back on, and you've goofed up all the threads. So I bought a whole tap and die set, because you can't buy 5/8 18 bolts. You can buy 5/8 18 nuts. And when I say I can't go to the farm and home and buy them. So I'm cleaning up all the old ones. I did the ones that wouldn't work anymore at all, and they worked so good that I thought, I'm going to go ahead and do the rest. And now I have a whole 45-piece set that I can do every bolt on the car. Most of the other bolts weren't very important, so I just ran through it. While I still have another, 10 years worth of work on this car, we have several other projects that we ought to be working on, and I'm going to do some shorts on them later, each of them, and please tell me what you'd like to see. I'll leave it as a surprise right now, but we've got a few projects that are different than this by a lot. So now we're to the point where the torsion bar is in, the spring clip is in, the pivot pin is in, the track arm is in snug but not tight. The upper control arms, both bushings are in snug but not tight. And it's time to put in the spindle. This is where those bolts go that I was just working on. It's amazing how long it takes to explain to somebody what 5/8 18 means and why 5/8 11 won't work where 5/8 18 was. I guess if you're only 16 and you work at the farm and home store though, you're probably not used to that.
Yeah, it's more of a farm store than anything else.
I think farmers have bolts. Okay, so if you remember from earlier, this is the ball joint. We left the ball joint in place with this. The spindle bolts to this arm with these two bolts, so you don't have to break that ball joint loose. Both the upper and lower ball joint were very tight, so I greased them and moved them all around, and they're appropriately tight now. I'm sure there's a very specific torque setting for these, but I don't know what it is. It's not that though.
With the spindle in place, we began the process of ensuring that the ball joints were correctly seated in the spindle, both upper and lower. This is a very important portion of this process, as if the ball joints are not properly seated, they will tighten down incorrectly and then seat later and end up loose, or not seat completely and rattle the whole thing apart, or mess with the geometry of your front suspension. And overall, it's just a very important thing to go slow and methodical at this point in time. That being said, the ball joints on this had just come apart. They're rather fresh. They went together without too much of a hassle. And after that, you can see here us putting in some brand new cotter pins. We were able to get the cotter pins apart when we did the brakes the first time and reused several of them, but these cotter pins were just trashed by the time we got them out. They'd probably gone through 2 or 3 uses, and ideally cotter pins are a single-use item, but we simply slotted new ones into the old castle nuts to keep everything in place. With the spindle on and everything else attached to it correctly, we've gotten to the putting back together stage that we've done in the past, and if you want a more in-depth look into us replacing the shocks or going through the whole brake system on the car, you can look at our back catalog on our channel and see those things. It's a relatively simple process, but we go pretty in-depth on it all there, as well as the components that we put on the car and how they affected it then. But with that, we're going to get to the section of us driving around the car and kind of getting into our thoughts on how rebuilding. Shortly after doing this project on the car, we took it on several fairly long road trips, one of which was to Dragway 42 for their annual Mo Party show. That video is going to be coming out on the channel in the near future. And then the big one was our drive from Northeast Ohio to Columbus, Ohio for the big one of the year, Mopar Nationals at National Trail Raceway. Both of those trips went off without any kind of a hitch at least for this car. My Dodge Dakota had a little bit of an issue on the way to Mopar Nationals, but what's a trip without a little bit of drama? Aside from that, rebuilding the front end on this actually made far more difference than we thought. The car tracked fine beforehand on any kind of flat ground. It was really only in the bumps where we were seeing issues. But you don't necessarily notice all the other little things, like the front end kind of getting a bit jiggly at high speeds, or deflection in the control arms when you go around corners hard, until you replace all those things and you realize, the car is a bit crappier than we thought. But with all of that being said, this really wasn't too much effort or cost to really improve the car a great deal. It was the longest project we've done on it so far. It probably took us 2 full weekends to do it. And that's something we're kind of trying to avoid with this project. We're really hoping to keep everything to in and out, do it in a weekend, and keep the car driving as much as possible. And as I'm currently recording this in the beginning of October, we really managed to do that better than we expected. But that's all information for another video. So I will once again thank you for getting this far, and humble ask of some likes and subscribes. It really goes a long way to helping YouTube promote these videos and keeping us at it. So until next time.